serious answer. I think Teddy Roosevelt consolidated the monopoly power in the in the guise of breaking up the monopolies. What he's actually doing is consolidating the victory of a few monopolists, right? So
Like who?
Rockefellers for sure. Definitely
Like with what? Like which Rockefeller monopolies?
Standard Oil. Absolutely, it had to be restructured in a lot of ways, but that restructuring actually
because of the trust busting policies, right?
But what the restructuring actually did was it diversified the wealth and centralized it even more, made it more resilient. Actually,
wait, hold on. So the diversification centralized Standard Oil.
Yeah, when you diversify something under still the central control of banks, and that's what the Rockefellers did, they went into banking, then it's actually a more effective form of control than just having an industry or a company that's a monopoly. The ultimate monopoly is a financial monopoly, right? So the Federal Reserve doesn't get touched.
So you think that Teddy Roosevelt went through with this trust busting
he consolidated
in order to enable the consolidation
financial
of
elites,
wealth,
absolutely,
in the banks,
right? He did. I mean, the Federal Reserve cartels were not broken up. Okay, so
well, hold on, but admittedly, the monopolies within of Standard Oil were, and you're just saying that this was a long game, being played in order to then centralize.
Because financial monopoly is just more dynamic. So when you're monopoly,
so why did hold on? If that's the case, why did Teddy Roosevelt have to do any of the trust busting with Standard Oil? The Federal Reserve
is a meat he had to throw at the masses, a bone he had to throw at the electorate, the American people. They were sick of it.
So it wasn't something that was like a long game. It was something that he had to do because people required it, because the both. Democratic voice has control over the presidency.
The monopolies in their current form are unsustainable, right? So financially,
why? Hold on. How were they unsustainable? How were the monopolies unsustainable, other than the fact they were unpopular?
Because the law of all industries is that eventually you go bankrupt, right? So banking becomes the only thing that's solvent.
Hold on. Qualify that. Qualify how that's true.
Well, because there's something called the falling rate of profit. All companies are destined to eventually not make even anymore and go under, in which they have to go bankrupt and get loans and credit from banks. So these are the kind of things that created the American economy in the 20th century as we know it, right? And multiple times throughout the 20th century, even before 1929, we saw collapses of the U.S. economy, like the bank run before the creation of Federal Reserve, I believe it was in 1907. That was rescued by a coalition of bankers, who came to the rescue just because they were so benevolent or whatever. Companies eventually tend toward, even monopolies, you can't eternally keep jacking up the prices. So eventually they kind of start going under. And the only thing that keeps them solvent is by continuing to take out loans, continuing to take out credit, right? So eventually the only really solvent monopoly is the financial kind. Anything that's like actually rooted in industry, even if it's oil, even if it's something else, these are not at the top of the pecking order, and they're not the most fundamental type of monopoly. That's why the Rockefellers went into banking, because they could collateralize and securitize the revenues they were getting from the oil to start issuing credit and issuing out loans, right?
And so you think that it was, let me get this straight. So it was let's say it was of democratic prudence that Teddy Roosevelt broke up Standard Oil with his trust busting policies because the people were sick of Standard Oil. But simultaneously, this was something that he did in order to actually advantage the Rockefellers, who were in charge of Standard Oil, so that they could have more of a presence in banking, which they already had nonetheless.
Not just the Rockefellers, but I would say a smaller circle of the U.S. Monopoly capitalist elite, and they kicked off some other capitalists for sure, and they tightened their circle for sure.
Yeah, I just don't think that makes any sense. Like, I think everything you just described is, first of all, if democracy doesn't matter, if democracy doesn't matter, then Teddy Roosevelt wouldn't have had to do anything. Second of all, I think it's a super convenient excuse where you say, well, Teddy Roosevelt, his hand was.
The thing that he has to answer to is popular unrest, okay? Because there's absolutely explosive social tensions that could lead to instability and revolution and stuff, and strikes.
Hold on. Do you think Trump right now is more scared of instability or a lack of democratic support?
I don't think he's scared of either, actually. I think what Trump is scared of is the fact that He's
Okay,
not going
then how about Tim Walz? Do you think Tim Walz was more scared of a lack of democratic support or a lack or instability? Which do you think was more frightening to Tim
politicians
Walz?
are career politicians. Of course, they care about their electorate. It doesn't mean that elections can change
So
anything
so you,
fundamentally.
hold on. So you're telling me
yeah,
that
for a
popular
personal
support
career
and democratic
politician.
processes
Okay, for
can exert a
politicians,
pressure on a politician
elections
in
matter.
order to get them to stand down or change platforms. Are you
So
admitting that?
elections matter for politicians. They don't matter for actually making meaningful changes in this country.
Well, what do you think that a politician? What do you think the response of a politician is if he begins to lack popular support?
He gets elected out. So he loses, but the system remains. So he gets replaced by someone else. But
And if he
nothing,
and if he's
but
replaced
nothing
because
changes
he
in the terms
has
of the system. Nothing changes.
okay, I just think this is a little silly. I
But
mean,
it's the truth. Like nothing
so
really
the
changes.
so the border policy. Admittedly, like I
Yeah.
think I would agree with you, by the way, that there are plenty of there's lots of handicaps. Like I think the whole idea, right, of international law is kind of a stupid handicap that we've kind of imposed upon ourselves. It doesn't make much sense. But if we're going to talk, about border policy, it is a tangible fact. It is a political and just observable fact that there are fewer confrontations at the border now than there were 4 years ago, and that there are
Yeah, and
fewer
I
illegal
don't think
immigrants
that
in the
matters all that
United States
much.
than
That
before.
really doesn't matter
Oh,
all
okay,
that
well,
much.
hold on. You could disagree about it, but the truth is, and this is a shift in goalposts on your part. The fact is
No, I could
that
explain it.
a changing in the presidency has led to a tangible
Nope.
decrease of an immigrant population in the United
So
States.
look, the bulk of the immigrants that were structurally, necessary according to the uniparty agenda or whatever to bring in happened under Biden. After that, the continued flooding of the country with his same constant rate of immigrants stopped being the goal. So there is continuity between the
Why did
Biden.
that stop? Wait, hold on. That seems super convenient. Like instead of just admitting that the
No.
American people
Okay.
got sick of that and
Was
voted in
Kamala
somebody who was
Harris
against it,
planning was
you just
Kamala
said
Harris
you just
planning on tightening the border?
How is it the
Hold on,
case
was
that
Kamala
that
Harris
the
planning on tightening the border?
uniparty somehow agrees with the
Was
American
Biden
people?
already taking steps to tighten the border, and was Kamala Harris planning on tightening the border?
Yeah, they were attempting to, and you know
Okay.
why?
It's
It's
'cause
because
there's
it was one of the
continuity.
most no, it was because it was one of the most unpopular things.
It doesn't matter what the reason is. There was Jesus Christ. Fucking app stopped working. Fucking app disconnected. Holy shit. Yeah, the app disconnected. Hello? 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 Sewell, is anyone here?
Yeah, what's up, dude?
Yeah, the app disconnected.
Yeah, everyone went silent for like a minute.
Yeah. Bring that guy back.
Yeah, Tazul has to do it, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's continuity in the policy. Does caring about the sentiments of the American people is definitely something the American government, yeah, they have to respond to it to prevent unrest. They have to do it to control opposition. They have to do it to control things don't go out of hand internally. People don't lose faith in the system. But at the end of the day, the elections don't matter. There's a continuity of policy. They were going to tighten the border regardless. And it doesn't matter what the reason. He's saying it was only because it was unpopular. That's not the only reason. The whole point was to bring cheap labor into the country to an extent, but not to flood the entire country to proportions that are just totally out of control. Let's bring on the Hassan Loyal guy.